From the unexplained to the mundane, come join us on a journey to the fringe. Hello and welcome to Journey to the Fringe, where I feel like we just need to add a preface to the start of these things now. The inane laughing at our own jokes is part of the entire process. We are very aware of it. If you're here because you like the person that we are making fun of or we're learning about, you're probably going to have a bad time. I'm just telling you that now. On an episode that doesn't have one specific person that we're talking about. So here we are, laughing inanely.
Laughing nonetheless.
But laughing nonetheless. We are your hosts, Taylor and Chelsea, laughing inanely, I'm sure, at some point in this episode. Here today, talking about, I've kind of had a hard time describing my topic today, but I think the easiest way to describe it...
With an article from the New York Post.
Nothing but New York Post. But only if it's supported by the Epoch Times.
I'll never make the mistake again.
No, the topic today is, I guess the best way to put it is space-based or UFO-based lawsuits.
Oh, even better.
And these aren't quite connected cases, but I felt like this would just be a fun thing to do. We haven't done a walk down law lane in a while, so I thought this would be a fun time.
Okay, that definitely sounds like a fun time.
Strap yourself in. There are some interesting stories. We're definitely going to learn about some famous UFO cases, but at the same time, we're not going to look that much into them because we're more so worrying about the lawsuit that comes about from it.
We hate looking at anything in depth.
On how you guys want us to look at it.
Vaguely cover it and move on. Perfect.
Or allude to it for a couple years.
Yeah, and then cover it at some point, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe just cover it poorly in all the ways you wouldn't think of talking about it, and then just alluding to it again.
And without much more rambling, because we just want to get into these stories, Chelsea, I think everybody's at least seen people claiming that the rocks on Mars are different things, be it lizards, be it bagels, be it Bigfoot way back in the day. But people are always claiming that, yet they're taking no actions. How dare they? Well, somebody has in fact taken actions against NASA to force them to look into these issues that they've found on the surface of Mars in the photos that they've taken.
Interesting.
This story comes from a law firm's website, Kahane Law, and it's about this man who's taken this step. So this suit comes from a scientist in California named Dr. Joseph. He is suing NASA for failing or refusing to investigate a rock found by the Mars rover. He claims that the rock is actually an alien life form, a fungus, and that they were failing to do their duty by not investigating it properly. Joseph filed his suit in the U.S. District Court in San Francisco against NASA, as well as Charles Bolden, their administrator. In the petition he filed, he said, quote, "The refusal to take close-up photos from various angles, the refusal to take microscopic images of the specimen, the refusal to release high-resolution photos is inexplicable, recklessly negligent, and bizarre." End quote. Joseph also believes that the object is growing since it was first spotted in earlier pictures, and NASA has a different explanation. They do not feel as though it is any type of alien life. They claim that it is merely a rock, although it has, quote, "an unusual amount of sulfur, magnesium, and manganese," end quote. They also do not believe that it has moved at all, as others claim. Instead, they say that the rover must have bumped into the rock and moved it. Joseph is demanding that NASA release the high-resolution pictures of the object, as well as 24 microscopic shots of the interior, and he wants all of this information made public. Naturally, he also wants the naming rights too. While it might seem outlandish, Joseph is very serious about this belief, and he has others who are backing him up in this. Even if he were right, which is unlikely, and it was an alien life form, the chance of that information coming out because of this lawsuit is pretty slim. It's important to note that this is not Joseph's only fringe type of theory. He's also written a number of papers and books covering the September 11th attack, as well as alien life. For many, these things discredit his credibility as a scientist, and it is quite unlikely that this suit goes anywhere. Even though Joseph might not be correct about the alien fungus on Mars, which sounds like a 1950s B-movie title, it doesn't mean that others won't continually pursue NASA's images and videos looking for proof. While that probably won't be the way that humans discover alien life, it does make for some fine entertainment. Chelsea, this happened in 2014, actually, this case, and I did find the judge's decision. I just took a few quotes from it. Here, Joseph requests that the court order NASA to, quote, take 100 high-resolution close-up in-focus photos, end quote, of the specimen he has identified. Quote, take a minimum of 24 microscopic in-focus images, end quote, of the specimen, supply the images to the public, allow Joseph to, quote, act as an observer at the rover command facility and appoint 2 NASA astrobiologists to rover team, end quote. Credit Joseph with discovering the organism and allow him to appear as first author on the first 6 articles relating to the discovery. So he petitioned the court for this. This becomes kind of important right here. Because Joseph has not requested relief and his petition does not state any cause of action other than mandamus, which, one sec, I need to actually be able to say what that word is and I don't know it.
Not mandamus.
Yeah. Oh, it's to make them do something that they're legally required to do.
That would make sense.
The court orders Joseph to show cause why his petition should not be dismissed for failure to state a claim. Joseph's petition raises only a generalized grievance shared with many citizens. Joseph alleges that he is an astrobiologist and has published many papers in the field. Petition at 15 to 22. However, quote, standing is not measured by the intensity of the litigant's interest or the fervor of his advocacy. The only injury Joseph alleges is NASA's failure to investigate a specimen depicted in an image taken during a Mars rover mission. This is not an injury particular to Joseph. Joseph also suggests that he is standing because he is a taxpayer. Generally, taxpayer standing is only allowed, quote, in a narrow range of establishment clause cases, end quote, because the establishment is a specific limitation on exercise of the power to tax and spend. In addition to not alleging a violation of the establishment clause, Joseph does not appear to have alleged a violation of any specific federal law. Accordingly, it is ordered that Joseph show cause why this case should not be dismissed for failure to state a claim and or for lack of standing.
Those are some nice burns.
Yeah, I really like when it's formal. Just telling you you're an idiot, go away.
I do love that.
I also Googled this guy, and it turns out this is by no means the only ridiculous lawsuit he's filed. All of them, he's a self-rep. So Dr. Joseph sued Amazon in 2012, alleging that Amazon regularly, quote, publishes and copyrights defamatory and libelous statements about competitors, including the plaintiff. He sued Springer Nature, who he contends conspired to cover up his discoveries and defraud him as they retracted some of his papers about extraterrestrial life in 2020. And there was a criticism in the court case there. The complaint is at times difficult to follow. It is littered with speculation, confusing ramblings, conclusory legal assertions, and personal attacks against the defendants. It got dismissed in 2021 with prejudice, which means he has to pay the other lawyer. And then he said that the judge who dismissed his case is a fraud who was bribed. He basically went out and made a statement. You have at least 2 crooked judges, Cronin, who took bribes, and Viscosil, who is covering it up. Both judges have conspired with the defendants to commit fraud against the court and to pervert and obstruct justice. And they have ruled that a click-through agreement is valid, despite the fact that even the defendant admits it is fake and it is impossible for anyone to click, check, agree, or sign. But that truth doesn't matter to these 2 black-robed criminals because, as Voskovisil has admitted, the case is fixed. Cronin belongs in a jail cell. Voskovisil is not fit to serve on the bench, and no, I don't expect you to investigate the 2 gangsters in black robes. I expect you and the Southern District to cover it up and blame the victim, because I suspect there are a lot of judges who are taking bribes, just like Cronin, which is why Voskovisil is covering it up. If these 2 representatives of the Southern District, then it's a cesspool of corruption. Oh, and sorry, his name's Ron Joseph. Spelt R-H-A-W-N. He then went on to sue the city of San Jose. Joseph was involved in a feud in 2018 with his next-door neighbor over light intrusions onto his property. Joseph has alleged that his neighbor hated him for, quote, his race, religion, and sexual orientation, end quote. He also alleged that San Jose code inspector, Joseph Gibelisco, I'm sure that's how you say it, likely solicited and accepted money from and entered into a conspiracy with plaintiff's neighbor to commit hate crimes against plaintiff based on plaintiff neighbor's perception of plaintiff's race, religion, and sexual orientation. Joseph filed a lawsuit against the city of San Jose as well, as he alleged they told him to strip 8 of his cypress trees from their base up to 5 feet, as they were in violation of certain municipal code provisions, and he alleged that that would affect their aesthetic value and endanger their health, and that the city did not provide him with a code violation. He argued that the First Amendment should offer free speech protection to his cypress trees, as they are a symbol of his religious beliefs.
This guy just really wants to sue someone.
Yeah, he sure
does. Is he a doctor of suing people?
No, because he would be better at it by then. I think he might actually have a PhD in astrobiology. I didn't look into that part. There's too many lawsuits.
What an interesting thing to speculate on. Astrobiology?
Yeah.
Well, then maybe it should be founded.
Yeah. And yeah, Joseph also alleged that the 12 cypress trees that he planted had a mythical and religious significance. Plaintiff suggested that he planted 12 cypress trees because he thinks the number 12 has both religious and cosmic significance, citing the fact that there were 12 tribes of Israel, 12 disciples of Christ, 12 hours in part of the day, 12 signs of the zodiac, and 12 gods of Olympus. He claims that, quote, 12 has been seen as a mystical, magical, and religious symbol, and again, it has cosmological significance, end quote.
The 12 from like all different kinds of religions.
All different kinds of religions, and then also part of a day.
Yeah. This guy's nuts.
He added that, quote, as a reflection of my own beliefs, I planted 12 and I made sure it was 12. And then I put this Celtic cross as well as other religious symbols such as a Buddha because I shared Buddhist beliefs and those are right there in my front yard between those trees. In short, the plaintiff is quite adamant that this feeling towards his trees is not part of any set of religious beliefs and certainly not part of any organized or recognized religion. Instead, to put it in his own words, he describes trees as such, quote, they're still religious symbol. Well, not religious, spiritual. Let's not use the word religious. Other people would because it is a religious symbol. To me, it's a spiritual symbol that happens to have religious significance. End quote, end of that whole part.
Couple comments. I love that he planted 12, then made sure it was 12.
Yeah. Hey, how many I got now?
Yep, that was 12. Just gotta retally it and make sure it was 12.
You know, maybe he's a doctor of carpentry because, like, the first rule of carpentry is measure twice, cut once.
Yeah.
And maybe he applied it to trees. Count twice, plant once.
Count, then plant, then count
And
again.
count, yeah. I didn't say he was a good doctor of carpentry.
The United States, man, not only do you sue over everything, but you like, and this guy is like the epitome of it. You don't see people like this in Canada that often.
You say that, but I live in the same town as David Lindsay, and my God, he's a character.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, he's a guy who's going through a court case right now for assaulting a police officer during COVID.
Oh, that guy. I didn't know him by name.
Yeah, he made all his money telling people that they don't actually have to pay taxes.
I remember that.
Allegedly.
On that note, I wonder what the Queen of Canada's up to. On a different note, back to this guy we're talking about, the doctor. So I love that he's suing everyone over everything. Love that. And then there's the typical, like, all of this stuff that I'm taking a stand against is for spiritual purposes. So you
religion. Well, spiritual for religious people if they were.
But remember, I am using it as a religious exemption, but it don't say
it's
religious.
Just spiritual for me. And the San Jose lawsuit got dismissed in 2023 from that judgment. Here, there is no genuine issue of material fact because, one, the San Jose Municipal Code provisions requiring trees to be kept pruned and below a certain height are valid and neutral regulations of general application that do not constitute a constitutionally cognizable or otherwise substantial burden on the exercise of plaintiff's belief, as he has described them in his deposition. Two, plaintiff specifically disavows religion and claims that his connection to his trees is rooted in a vague and indeterminate concept of spirituality, quantum physics, and cosmic mechanics. 3. Plaintiff has failed to demonstrate that any of the actions complained of in his SAC ever actually impinged on any of his beliefs. And 4. Plaintiff conceded that he was neither even made to cut his trees or that he was ever assessed any fine or penalty related to his trees. So,
wow.
He also sued NASA again in 2016. I never found out what he sued them for, but it was dismissed with prejudice. He, owes NASA money. So yeah, that's the first one. I actually found him more interesting than the first lawsuit that he did. He might get his own episode at some point. It turns out he wrote a scientific paper that says plasma that lives in the atmosphere is living. And that's what UFOs are.
The stuff that comes out of your nose at seances? Or the blood stuff?
More like lightning, I think is a good way to put it.
Why do we have so many words for plasma?
I don't know.
So many things called plasma.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Okay. We're going to move on from our friend Ron Joseph to something that...
Doctor.
Sorry, Dr. Ron Joseph. Something probably a little more substantive than what he did. We're going to look at something called the Kecksburg incident, which, Chelsea, you might have an idea of what it is.
Oh, yeah.
But if not, I'm going to give an overview of it. On the evening of December 9th, 1965, a large, brilliant fireball was seen in at least 6 U.S. states and Ontario in Canada as it streaked over the Detroit, Michigan, Windsor, Ontario area. Reports of hot metal debris over Michigan and northern Ontario, grass fires and sonic booms in the Pittsburgh metropolitan area were attributed to this fireball. Some people in the village of Kecksburg, which is 30 miles southeast of Pittsburgh, reported wisps of blue smoke, vibrations, and a thump, and also that something from the sky had crashed into the woods. An early story in the Greensburg Tribune Review stated the following: the area where the object landed was immediately sealed off on the order of the U.S. Army and state police officials in anticipation of a close inspection of whatever may have fallen. State police officials there ordered the area roped off to await the expected arrival of both U.S. Army engineers and possibly civilian scientists. When state troopers and Air Force personnel searched the woods, they found, quote, absolutely nothing, end quote. A subsequent edition in the Tribune bore the headline, quote, searchers failed to find the object. Authorities discounted proposed explanations such as a plane crash, errant missile test, or re-entering satellite debris and generally assumed it to be a meteor. Astronomer Paul Annier said the fireball was likely to have been a meteor entering Earth's atmosphere. Geophysicist George Wetherillo discounted speculations that it was debris from a satellite and agreed that the report was probably due to a meteor. Astronomer William P. Biddleman and Fred Hess said it undoubtedly was a meteor, and a spokesman from the Department of Defense in Washington said first reports indicated that the reported fireball was a natural phenomenon. So that's the event. Happened in the 60s. Then I stumbled across a Vice news article on this, which I'm going to read quite a bit from because it's great. It's written by Matthew Goh. I think we've actually used him before.
Probably.
New documents shed light on NASA's secretive Project Moondust. There's still no solid answers as to what crashed in Pennsylvania that night, but new documents tied to an old lawsuit against NASA have uncovered a few of the missing pieces. A Freedom of Information Act request from the Black Vault, a clearinghouse for declassified documents, has uncovered new documents related to the Air Force's Project Moondust, a sustained effort to recover objects and debris from the spacecrafts that had crashed to Earth. Multiple people have been searching for these records for decades, and NASA has long claimed they were either destroyed or lost. Investigative journalist Leslie Keene hoped to uncover the truth in 2002 and went on the hunt for information about Project Moondust and the Kecksburg incident. A year later, she sued NASA, claiming it was holding back. After previously promising to conduct an expedited search for files related to the 1965 Kecksburg UFO crash, NASA had stonewalled and was withholding documents, leaving no recourse but this one, Keene said in a blog post in 2009. In 2007, NASA finally relented and gave over the files and agreed to pay Keene's legal fees related to the lawsuit. But some of the files related to Kecksburg and the Project Moondust were allegedly lost forever. According to a NASA public affairs document, included in this latest round of the documents, NASA sent its files to the National Archives for safekeeping 2 years after the Kecksburg incident. In 1996, the National Archives told NASA that the files had been marked as lost since 1987. Enter the Black Vault, which asked the government for all its documents related to the lawsuit with Keene. It got 220 pages back, including some fragments of the Project Moondust records. The file also detailed the reasons why they were so hard to find. NASA had destroyed many of them as part of a routine cleaning out of old records. The 220 pages are an interesting grab bag of NASA communications describing struggles to track down records and State Department communications about Project Moondust. The diplomatic cables are particularly interesting and paint a picture of NASA in the 1960s rushing around the world attempting to pick up every scrap that fell from the sky for study. For example, one diplomatic cable recounts the difficulty NASA had in collecting a piece of debris that fell in Zambia. Quote from this: "Contact says fragment measures 17 by 11 feet, is made of aluminum, and appears too large for pickup by Zambia Air Force caribou unless cut into." One cable said. Another quote: "Took 12 men to carry fragment through difficult terrain to strip, but 4 men could lift." End quote. According to the documents, NASA later identified the Zambia fragment as a piece of the Apollo AS-203, an unmanned test craft NASA launched in 1966. The documents are full of the minutiae of the early days of America's foray into space, when anything crashed to Earth could be part of someone's space program. But what exactly landed in Kecksburg that night in 65? In 2005, just ahead of the 40th anniversary of the incident, NASA announced it was a Russian satellite. But NASA couldn't prove its case because the records had been lost. Quote, as a rule, we don't track UFOs. What we could do, and what we apparently did as experts in spacecrafts in the 1960s, was to take a look at whatever it was and give our expert opinion, end quote, a NASA spokesperson said in 2005. We did that, quote, we did that, we boxed the case up, and that was the end of it. Unfortunately, the documents supporting those findings were misplaced, end quote. That, however, wasn't NASA's line in 1965. Quote, investigations of photographs and sightings of the fireball indicated its path through the atmosphere was probably too steep to be consistent with a spacecraft re-entering from Earth orbit, and was more likely a meteor in a prograde orbit from the vicinity of the asteroid belt, and probably ended its flight over western Lake Erie, end quote. It said in an archived press release in 65. NASA has steadfastly said that the Kecksburg was not the result of an extraterrestrial crash. Quote, one of NASA's key goals is the search for life in the universe. To date, NASA has yet to find any credible evidence of extraterrestrial life. However, NASA is exploring the solar system and beyond to help us answer fundamental questions, including whether we are alone in the universe. We lead the US government's search for extraterrestrial life, be it close to home, on planets or moons of our solar system, or deeper into space. NASA does not actively search for UAPs, and the lack of robust data is the central problem for scientific study of UAPs and to determine whether they are natural or human-made phenomena. There is no current data to support that UAPs or UFOs are evidence of alien technology. This is said by NASA to Motherboard, which is the subsidiary of Vice, or the section of Vice. I can leave out that last paragraph of this article just because I don't think it's that relevant. But NASA has also changed their position again, and they don't think it was a Russian satellite since that time.
With them speculating on their own without their own thing to back up. What do they say it is now?
So this is NASA's kind of like current position on this. There is some speculation that the re-entry of the Cosmos 96 Venera-type spacecraft was responsible for a fireball which was seen over southwest Ontario through from Michigan to New York. Investigations of photographs and sightings of the fireball indicated its path through the atmosphere was probably too steep to be consistent with the spacecraft re-entering Earth orbit, and was more likely a meteor in a prograde orbit from the vicinity of the asteroid belt. So they're back to, they've changed their minds again.
Interesting. Is that a lawsuit, or?
No, that's just their position.
Is there going to come a lawsuit?
No, there's no documents, so it's kind of hard to do anything.
Right.
It's just kind of where we are. But yeah, because a lawsuit came about, we did at least learn about Project Moondust, which is to collect anything coming down from space, regardless of where it is, which is incredibly interesting.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Moondust.
A little more serious, kind of different, but you'll hear Kecksburg come up a lot because it is kind of weird, and it was quarantined off. Like, everybody agrees on that, just nobody actually knows what landed.
Oh, I love it. Kecksburg's a good. It's up there on as far as my favorite UFO.
Yeah, and it's the one where people say there was like an acorn shaped thing leaving the site, correct?
Yeah, that's the one that is theorized by some of the eyewitnesses that it was. I mean, I guess in the end it was speculation because it was supposed that the Germans had the bell. It was supposedly in that sort of shape, so they think it was around the right time for it to possibly have been
yeah,
one of the many theories, I'm sure.
I'm just vaguely aware of that part of the story because it wasn't about the lawsuit. So I think I gave enough an overview of that. The last one we're actually going to finish off with, it's a fairly famous story. It came up actually in, what was I just talking about?
Doctor.
No, William English, I think was his name. He was in the first UFO casualty story. The British guy.
Was he the casualty?
No, he was the guy who uncovered it.
An author or something, right?
Yeah, this case came up in that story, so it's interesting that it's coming up again so soon. Can't be bothered to look up the guy's name, though, unfortunately. So don't worry, doesn't have anything to do with this story.
The record exists in our backlog.
Yeah, it's somewhere out there. Go listen.
Catalog, not backlog. Catalog.
It's commonly known as the Cash-Landrum UFO encounter. So
this
again,
sounds familiar.
Yeah, I'm going to set up the story for everybody so they can see what actually happened a little bit, or what has been alleged to happen. Then we'll see what comes of it. So on the evening of December 29th, 1980, Betty Cash, Vicky Landrum, and Vicky's grandson, Colby Landrum, together they are aged 51, 57, and 7, are driving home to Dayton, Martian, Texas, and Cash's Oldsmobile Cutlass after dining out. They later said that at about 9 p.m., they were driving on an isolated two-lane road in dense woods, and they saw a light above some trees. At first, they thought it was an airplane approaching Houston Intercontinental Airport, which is about 35 miles away, and gave it little notice. A few minutes later, on the winding roads, they saw what they believed to be the same light as before, but thought it was now much closer and brighter. They said that it came from a huge diamond-shaped object that was hovering at about treetop level, and its base was expelling flame and emitting a significant heat. Landrum told Cash to stop the car, fearing that they would be burned if they got closer. Landrum, who's a born-again Christian, interpreted the object as a sign of the second coming of Jesus Christ, telling Colby, quote, "That's Jesus, he will not hurt us," end quote. Outside of her firing at the UFO, I can't see a more American answer to that.
No, there's only the two options.
It's either Jesus or you shoot it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do both.
Sure, yeah. That if you're American enough, and that's anybody in the South.
So Cash says from here she was feeling anxious and considered turning the car around, but abandoned this idea because the road was too narrow and she presumed would get stuck in the dirt and would get stuck in the dirt shoulders, which were soft from the evening's rain. Also, she's driving an Oldsmobile, so it needs like a 17-point turn at that point. Cash and Landrum said that they got out of the car to examine the object, but that Colby was terrified. So Landrum said she quickly returned to the car to comfort him. Cash remained outside, quote, mesmerized by the bizarre sight. The object, intensely bright and dull metallic silver, was shaped like a huge upright diamond, about the size of the Dayton Water Tower, with its top and bottom cut off so that they were flat rather than pointed. Small blue lights ringed the center, and periodically over the next few minutes, flames shot out the bottom, flaring outward to create the effect of a large cone. Every time the fire dissipated, the UFO floated a few feet downward towards the road, but then the flames blasted out again. The object rose about the same distance. They said the heat was strong enough to make the car's metal body painful to touch. Cash said she had to use her coat to protect her hands from being burned by the door handle when she finally got back in the car. When she touched the dashboard, Landrum claimed that her hand pressed into softened vinyl, leaving an imprint that was evident weeks later. Investigators cited it as proof of their account. Video evidence of this was shown in UFOs, What's Going On, in 1985 HBO documentary. They said that the object then ascended from the treetops and rose higher in the sky, and then a group of helicopters approached it, surrounding it in tight formation. Cash and Landrum counted 23 helicopters and later identified some of them as tandem rotor Boeing CH-47 Chinooks used by military forces worldwide. More specifically, Cash claimed that they had United States Air Force markings. And with the road now clear, Cash says she drove on, claiming to see glimpses of the object and the helicopters receding into the distance. From first sighting the object to its departure, they said the encounter lasted about 20 minutes. Based on the description given, it appears that they were southbound on Texas State Highway when they claimed to have seen the object. So that's the actual story itself. From there, though, and this is where it gets the most interesting, I think. Like, it's a pretty bizarre case because you never hear flames.
And I'm interested to see where this goes. And no, you don't usually see flames, even from, like, military vehicles.
Yeah, you do see black helicopters. They come up. I think it's an episode we've always actually kind of had on the list to do.
Oh, yeah, black.
It seems like a very specific time frame where they kind of happen. But that's enough because I want to continue on with the story, the real juicy part that we get into, and it's the health problems that start to arise. So the witnesses claim after the UFO and helicopters left, Cash took the Landrums home and then went home herself. That night, they apparently all experienced similar symptoms, though Cash to a greater degree. The claim was that they all suffered from nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, generalized weakness, a burning sensation in their eyes, and a feeling as though they were suffering from sunburns. Over the next few days, Cash said her symptoms worsened, with many large painful blisters forming on her skin. When taken to a hospital emergency room on January 3rd, 1981, Cash could not walk and had lost large patches of skin and clumps of hair. She was released after 12 days, though her condition was not much better, and she later returned to the hospital for another 15 days. In the HBO documentary from '85, Cash's hair was shown in pictures, and she claimed doctors switched from treating her for burns to treating her for radiation sickness after realizing she had been exposed to radiation. Later, she was treated for cancer. The Landrums' health was somewhat better, though reportedly both suffered from weakness, skin sores, and hair loss. And in April of 1981, Vicky was found to be developing a cataract in one eye, and Betty was first treated for breast cancer in 83. Neither condition was known to have been present prior to their UFO encounter. That's what this one gets known for. There's actual symptoms coming from this encounter. At least it seems to be from that.
That doesn't prove that it's extraterrestrial, though.
No, and that's actually where this goes. During their Bergstrom Air Force Base interview 8 months post-incident, when asked to sketch a picture of what they saw, if it had a discernible shape, Betty drew and signed what she described as a diamond. Eventually, Cash-Landrum contacted their U.S. Senator, Lloyd Bentsen, and John Tower, and they suggest that the witnesses file a complaint with the Judge Advocate Claim Office at Bergstrom Air Force Base. In August of 1981, Cash-Landrum and Colby are interviewed at length by personnel at Bergstrom Air Force Base and are told that they should hire a lawyer and seek financial compensation for their injuries. So they find a lawyer, Peter Gersten. He takes this case on pro bono, and the case ends up going through the U.S. courts for several years. Cash-Landrum sued the U.S. federal government for $20 million. And testimony of officials from NASA, the Air Force, and Army and Navy are all given. I do have a few excerpts just from, I couldn't find the original documents, unfortunately, because they're too old, but there's a few things from those documents that still kind of are out there. Filed herewith are the sworn affidavits of Robert Sommers, NASA, U.S. Air Force, just all the people that are involved. The affidavits established that the UFO allegedly seen by plaintiffs, and which is alleged was proximate cause for their asserted injuries, is not and was not owned, operated, or in the aircraft inventories of the United States of America, nor was it such an object under the control of the United States or its employees. On the basis of those affidavits, the United States moves this court for an order dismissing the complaint of plaintiffs with prejudice, or in the alternative, finding that there exists no genuine issue of material fact. In response to this, we have a letter from the Department of Air Force. The appeal of your client's claims of personal injuries allegedly caused by an overflight of unidentified flying object and unidentified helicopters on December 29, 1980 have been considered under 10 USC 2733 and are denied. The reason for this decision is the facts that, as alleged by the claimants, failed to establish that their injuries were caused in any way by the U.S. government or in any of its agencies or instrumentalities, and you should not consider the acceptance and subsequent denial of the claim as an admission of the truth of any facts alleged by your clients. Our investigation has revealed no evidence of involvement by any military personnel, equipment, or aircrafts in this alleged incident, and the arguments you presented to establish liability of the government are not supported by any case or statutory law. This is the final administrative action that can be taken on your client's claims. This denial also satisfies the administrative filing requirements of the Federal Tort Claims Act. Based on this denial, your clients have the right to file suit against the government in an appropriate United States District Court not later than 6 months from the date of the mailing of this letter. And it finishes off, there is an order of dismissal. It is hereby ordered that the above noted cause of action is dismissed pursuant to the federal government civil procedures rules. So, unfortunately, it doesn't go anywhere, but at least they tried to sue the U.S. government, and I find it an interesting argument. We don't own it, so we don't owe you any money.
You know, it kind of reminds me a little bit, vaguely, not exactly, of United Kingdom one.
Rendlesham Forest.
Yeah, and then they have a whole bunch of health problems and they can't get it covered because the incident never...
Yeah, that part of their profile's redacted. And unfortunately, they never sued for it, so they didn't make the list. I actually specifically looked that up to see if it did.
That gives you something to think about. I mean, they suffered a lot of health problems, and where do you see compensation from for that?
Yeah, and they all kind of suffer the same one, so it's an interesting case.
They try to sue the plagiarians.
They could.
And I'm saying that with complete seriousness. Notice my lack of maniacal laughter. Inane, sorry.
I know, I keep using different ones. It is inane, though. Yeah, I don't know. Could Beam actually do that on their behalf? Would they need to get a lawyer, or would he just channel the lawyer?
No, he would be able to go directly to the source. Plagiarian.
Yeah. If anybody, actually, no, they're not going to listen, unfortunately. But it did seem like somebody who listened to us at one point did have a connection to Beam. So if they could get us in touch, that would be great. We could see if they have anything to do with this.
Oh, they definitely.
And what their tort system is like. But yeah, Chelsea, I had a hard way of describing it. It all made sense to me as the category, but it's weird cases in our parameter that had lawsuits attached to them.
It's the legal woes of
UFOs.
Yeah.
But NASA, that first one with NASA on Mars doesn't quite fit that. No UFOs. Maybe a mushroom, but I doubt it. I really doubt it.
It'll come to us.
Okay. But yeah, anything you want to add before we wrap this up?
No, because I have not myself sued anybody. I've not myself yet seen a UFO and needed to sue, nor have I been tracking what NASA is up to so carefully, as if when they slip up, I will sue them.
And hey, we at least know about Project Moondust, which is an interesting thing. We'll probably never know more about it, but it is a super cool little project. Like, they had to go to Africa and get a spaceship, just one we made.
Yeah, just because it didn't fit with the country isn't well equipped to be able to retrieve it.
Oh. But with that, I think that's a good place to stop. I have been Taylor, here with Chelsea. We are Journey to the Fringe. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Journey to the Fringe. If you have liked what you have listened to, please like, share, subscribe, or follow, depending on what venue you are listening to us through. Also, please, if possible, leave a 5-star review, as that really helps us in the algorithms. Should you wish to interact with us, please check us out on your social media of choice. I bet you we are there. And if you really want to communicate with us and give us ideas for new episodes, or tell us that we're wrong and terrible, either way, please send us an email at journeytothefringe@gmail.com. For now, I'll see you in the next episode.